All right, gang. So, Rings of Power is out. Watch the first two episodes. People have been hating on this thing for months. Not without some legitimate concerns, I admit. I was also on the hate train a little bit and legitimately worried based on some decisions that were made regarding the lore. They're compressing the timeline. This is both understandable, but also a little worrisome. They're changing Galadriel's character fairly significantly into some kind of like warrior woman. This is very not her, which is, well, getting ahead of myself here. But anyway, I figured I'd just give my thoughts because I have a channel with 22 followers and clearly the world is dying to know. But more so because I've read a lot of the books. I've read the Lord of the Rings trilogy several times. I've read the Silmarillion several times. I'm going through the Book of Lost Tales for the first time right now and loving it. I'm listening to the audiobook from Audible. And if you guys haven't ever read that and are really interested in the unpublished essays and letters and stories that Tolkien wrote that kind of became the Silmarillion and some of the groundwork for other stories that he wanted to tell but never really got around to it. It's great. So definitely go check that out if you can. But anyway, I'm going to also try and give just a generally objective review. I think, as hardcore a fan as I am, I'm not a purist in the sense that I understand that television or film is a different medium than literature, and certain sacrifices have to be made, and I'm willing to allow those sacrifices to be made. I think the condensing of the story into a shorter amount of time is fine, but instead of dwelling on some of these things, let's get into what we actually saw. The first episode starts off with Galadriel kind of hunting with those elven companions that she had. And here we see, I think I'm just going to get right into it then, the issues I have with Galadriel's character. It's not really the most accurate thing to describe her as an elf, even though that is exactly what she is. At this stage in her life, and especially when we meet her in The Lord of the Rings, she's more of an entity than a person or an individual. And to see her kind of like, climbing rocks and punching through blocks of ice and fighting trolls with swords, it seems beneath her, quite frankly. And what's so kind of ironic about them trying to turn her into this girl boss action hero is that it actually undersells how powerful she is supposed to be. Galadriel is on the level of a Luthien or a Melian from the First Age, if any of you are aware of these characters, who are quite powerful. Melian, famously, is a Maia. She's of the order of Gandalf and Sauron and Saruman, where Luthien is just an elf who is, well, half Maia, so I guess she's got all the power in her. Anyway, in a fight with a troll, Galadriel could just look it in the eye and it would run away in terror, or it would be instantly tamed and never harm anything again. Like, it just kind of depended on what side of the bed she woke up on that morning. And so when I watch her like twirling around with these companions that I guess she's supposed to be like hunting Sauron with, and apparently they can't even handle a troll. It requires her to just step in and just start flipping and swooshing and slashing. That all seemed very Hollywood, very forced. And we're going to get a few more instances like that. Actually, I hope we don't. I'm trying to think of other times where Galadriel seems quite that powerful, and she doesn't. She does do something kind of weird, which is jump into the water. This is going to be all over the place, ladies and gentlemen. This is stream of consciousness. So she does jump into the water when she's, easily hundreds of miles, if not potentially thousands of miles from the coast of Middle-earth, and she's just going to swim back. Galadriel, she could walk on the surface of the water back. So it's both a really dumb thing that she does, and yet a thing that she quite possibly could do, but the portrayal of that isn't done properly. Again, I don't know if the creators of the show understand what she is and what her powers truly are. And then, of course, she finds Halbarad, and there's some interesting dynamics with her later on. But overall, again, this is going to be all over the place. Overall, I would give the show kind of an average rating. 5 out of 10, maybe 6 out of 10 if I'm being generous. The Harfoots, as much as they don't even belong in the show, I actually didn't hate them as much as I thought I would. I thought the acting was fine. It was kind of funny, especially who's that guy? Who's the African-American British comedian? The African-British or the Black British comedian. Lenny Bruce or Lenny something. I forget his name. Anyway, he didn't do a bad job. I thought he was kind of funny. Kind of a goofy Hobbit-ish character. And I think their tying of that storyline with Meteor Man is smart, because otherwise no one would give a damn about these people. And even with Meteor Man, and even though I am liking them more than I do, the Hobbit storyline is really kind of, or the not Hobbit storyline is really kind of dragging. And every time we went to them, even though I was interested in knowing more about this probably Maya of some kind that's fallen to Earth or Middle Earth, I'm like, this is a distraction. I don't want these little halflings running around. I still want less of them. So, I would definitely recommend Amazon phase them out of the story rather than more in. What's the African-American elf guy? Arendir? I actually didn't mind that storyline at all. I didn't mind his character. The whole, black elf thing is still kind of weird, but, the thing that bothers me the most about him and a lot of elves is not so much the skin color. So many of them have short hair. I don't understand who thought this was a good idea, but it needs to stop. Amazon, please, if this video goes anywhere and anybody of any influence listens to these words, get rid of the short hair elves. It is driving me nuts. Every time I see one, I am immediately taken out of the story. And I say that as someone who was mildly entertained. Like I said, I give this a 5, a generous 6. It wasn't terrible. I think there's room for improvement. I'm still willing to watch episodes. And if it maintains a 5 to 6 rating, I'm willing to give the whole first season a fair shot and see if they can improve to the second season. But one of the things they have to do is get rid of this dumbass haircut thing. Where this came from, I have no idea. It does not look like Middle-earth. I feel like I'm seeing a modern British sitcom or television show, or like Downton Abbey. When I see these characters, I'm not sure what the reason for this was. It was stupid and it needs to stop. Honestly, the things that bugged me most were some of the kind of like mild, like the small mistakes that they made. Let's see. What's one of the big ones? Oh yeah. So this has been pointed out by a couple different people. The Drinker pointed this out, and Alex from AJ pointed this out. So I'm just going to repeat that here, but I noticed the exact same thing immediately when I watched this scene, which is when Celebrimbor and Elrond go to Khazad-dûm, and they just like walk around a corner as if they, it's just down the block. These people, Elrond and Celebrimbor, these are lords. These are men who have attendants and servants. They would be on horseback with half a dozen to a dozen people minimum, carrying their luggage, carrying their food. They'd have a cart or a carriage filled with stuff for them to camp, because it's at least a few days ride from Ostinaville to Khazad-dûm. It's things like that drove me crazy. Or like when Elrond tells Galadriel, no one's ever refused the gift to go to the west. Yes, they have. Have you ever heard of the Avari? I know you have, because you've clearly read some of the Silmarillion based on some of the other basic references, but how close they were reading it is anyone's guess. What was the other thing? Oh, yeah. So in Khazad-dûm, when Elrond's having dinner with Durin, they're sitting at a table that they clearly made themselves. Like, Durin's a prince. He'd have other servants answering his door and preparing his table and taking food and bringing it to them. All and getting, like, when his kids come out and they're messing around. I thought it was really funny, actually, when he said, "Stay out of my heads." That was good. I thought that was clever. There's the Dragon Helm of Dor-lómin. I didn't catch that the first time. It took me to watching the Nerd of the Rings review where he mentions it. I was like, oh shit, that was the Dragon Helm. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so, people would come and take these individuals away, and I don't know if this is like a writing thing or like a budget thing, a producer thing, where they aren't just constructing these scenes very well, or the writers don't understand what kind of like a pseudo-medieval society, how they would kind of behave. I know they're trying to write the dialogue in a kind of formal, high English style, which I think for the most part is working. I was very concerned that it would be way too modern, and it wasn't. So I'm okay with the way people are talking to each other for the most part. But, yeah, I think a lot of the settings need work. There's some I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed that just aren't. And it's taking me out of the story, both within the kind of generic medieval fantasy aesthetic and the specific Lord of the Rings medieval, or I should say, Tolkien Legendarium aesthetic, with elves having short hair. And, I saw a lot of the dwarven women without beards. They can have beards. I know Disa had like a little bit of stubble. That's fine with me. I don't really care that much. I'm willing to look past that as long as she's a good character and she fits well into the story. The Drinker thought she was hamming it up a little too much. I kind of agree with that. She needs to tone it down. Whoever that actress is, I don't know her name. I guess she's doing a really bad Scottish accent. I wouldn't know. The Drinker would. But ultimately, I found myself watching these, and even with the criticisms I have, I found myself generally liking it, which is why I say I give it a generous 6, and why I'm willing to kind of keep going. Were there anything else? I probably should have written down notes before I started recording this. I think I'm just going to start thinking and then cut the next part in right here. Okay, so some things that I liked. Some additional things that I liked. I like the mystery around the Meteor Man. I think they're definitely playing with our Lord of the Rings, Tolkien Legendarium sensibilities with the fire and the talking to insects and his, gray covered rug thing that he's wearing and his beard. They're like, is he Gandalf? Gandalf was a master of fire, and he spoke to moths, and he wore gray. But at the same time, he falls to the ground. You see that shot. It kind of looks like an eye before they cut to black. He's also, trying to clearly find a specific place. I believe he says something like Mana Use or something like that. That was something I didn't notice in the as I was watching it the first time, but Nerd of the Rings said a couple people in either his chat or on his Discord mentioned that. talking about the Hand of Fire, obviously a reference potentially to Sauron. Is that him? Is he just looking for him as an ally? Is he looking for him because he's out to stop him? There's a lot of they're doing that well, and I just wish they were tied to something a little better than the not hobbits that really shouldn't be there and are kind of a distraction. So I like the mystery around Bright Eyes, as my sister calls him, because she's attracted to Halbrand. She finds him quite alluring, and I think they're, jury's out on him. He could be potentially seduced by the dark powers. People have said he might be the Witch King. That'd be cool. I have a theory of my own on, I believe his name is Theo. Bronwyn's son finds a Morgul blade. He lives in the east, seems to be potentially seduced by the blade, seems to hate elves a little bit. Could he be Kamel? Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Where that's going to go. So that's kind of my call. I'm going to put $5 down on that one. He's going to end up being Kamel. What else? Oh, one thing that... See, the thing... There's some references to the First Age. And I understand that there are, rights limitations. They can't necessarily talk about everything. I really thought that the prologue was weak and you needed more. Galadriel has a great backstory. At one point she tells Halbrand that, I think I called him Halbarad a minute ago. I think it's Halbrand. Anyway, she tells him, it would take your entire lifetime to name all the people that I've lost in the fight. Yeah, that's a great line. And it really took too long for her to mention that to the audience. They kind of allude to that in the prologue by saying that, we came up with all kinds of words for death. The war went for centuries. She piles the helmet. She loses her brother. Yeah. But they don't say so much because they don't really, the average viewer, the average Lord of the Rings fan has really only seen the movies. So they don't understand that Galadriel has several brothers. She has a very famous father and very famous uncles who are all significant players in the First Age, and that they all die. Or, they're either killed by orcs or Morgoth or Morgoth's servants, or they kill each other in kinslayings. And she's had to see a lot. And when she says that to Elrond, she's not lying. She's got a good point on him. And he gives this bad line in response, like, without my sword, what am I to be? And he says, my friend. That's such a forced attempt at emotional connection between the two of them. He could have just said, and he should have just said, you can be whatever you want, Galadriel. The world is at peace. So he thinks, so he claims. Do whatever you want to do. Find peace and maybe go back to Valinor and let it rest. I think that's a better claim than you can just be like, we'll just be friends together. I'm sure she has other friends, maybe. I don't know. It just we've barely gotten to know their friendship, and all of a sudden that's like the linchpin of getting her to go back to Valinor, something that we've never really experienced between the two of them. That would have been a better line, at the end of the season after they've done some things together. But again, there's just a fair amount of, there's not a lot of T's being crossed. Again, it's the little things. I found most of it fine. Again, I was generally entertained, but they really need to concentrate on getting the little things right. And the nice thing about that is that there's plenty of room for improvement, and that's an easier thing to do because they clearly have the budget to make the show look good. And that's the hardest thing, is to just have the money to do it right. They have the money to do it right. Now they just need to take the time and actually pay attention to the finer points and make those a priority rather than clearly not a priority. One other thing I want to talk about, because pacing has been a criticism of the show. They're saying that some people are saying that it's too slow. I actually want it to be slower in a certain sense. I feel like each individual scene, like or storyline, is not being focused on long enough. Like, just as I'm starting to kind of get into what's going on in a particular storyline, we leave. And that's not good in my estimation. The inclusion of the Harfoots is definitely contributing to that problem. We would have a lot more time on Galadriel and Elrond and the Númenóreans and Arondir if they were not present. So if I could wave a magic wand, I would want this season to be 10 episodes and for them to spend a little bit of time fleshing out some of these people a little bit more, letting each individual storyline breathe for a bit. One of the reasons why, or the primary reason why, is because the prologue was so truncated. I don't know if casual fans, although my sister is a casual fan and she liked the 2 episodes way more than me, but I'd already kind of prepped her on the backstory. I don't know how she would feel if she had watched that prologue and then started watching the show, because I think most people are going to be like, who's Morgoth? Why is he such a big deal? We barely got to see anything about him. Why is the world the way it is? This is really kind of only scratching the surface of what actually happened. And I know that they probably can only say so much, but man, I don't know if it's enough for the average person, I guess. I guess we'll see how the casual fan responds. I watched one review from a person who's claimed to just be a casual fan. They've only watched the movies, and he enjoyed it. So I guess it doesn't matter. Hopefully they have some time to flesh it out over the course of this season and ultimately the show, so we can get a little bit of First Age. I really think there's so much to love. I love the Silmarillion, by the way. It's my favorite of all the Tolkien works that I've ever read. The Silmarillion is by far my favorite because it is ultimately a tragedy. And even though Morgoth is defeated in the end, there's so much struggle and sacrifice and futility in the fight to ultimately bring him down. And in the end, the elves really can't do it. They are defeated and have to sue for aid from the Valar a second time. Actually, they don't really ask for help a second time. The Valar give it freely the first time. But yeah, it just pulls at you emotionally in so many ways. I really recommend it for those of you who are watching or listening to this and haven't read the Silmarillion. It's a bit dense at first. You have to go through. There's what is it at the beginning? There's the Ainulindale and the Valaquenta. I think I'm remembering those correctly. There are 2 sections where there's a lot of names of gods and a lot of tribes of elves and names of elves and things are a little disjointed and it hops around because Tolkien never finished the work and Christopher Tolkien kind of had to just amalgamate his notes and outlines and put it into as cohesive a narrative as he could. And it's a pretty successful project on Christopher Tolkien's to Christopher Tolkien's credit. It's impressive. He does a great job putting it all together. It emotionally spoke to me, and I think that if you can grind through that first 25 to 30% of the book where you're just it's a lot of minutia, then the rest of the stories really open up and become pretty great. And if reading it is going to be a challenge, I recommend again I don't work for Audible, by the way. I don't own any stock in Audible. I'm recommending Audible a second time here. They don't promote my 22 sub channel. Their audiobook is fantastic. I believe it's narrated by Martin Shaw, who basically has the voice of Iluvatar. It's amazing, and he does a fantastic job, and I wish he was somewhere in this Rings of Power show. Maybe he will show up, but his narration is fantastic. So go out and get that if you have the opportunity and are interested. I'm really not, I can't think of anything else. I think I'm going to take an opportunity to just pause here again. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to mention other than some of those weird little things, like just walking down to Khazad-dûm. Oh yeah, and Lindon being referenced as the capital when it's the capital of the High Elves is not Lindon. Lindon is the region. I guess they're like using those terms interchangeably. Rather than Mithland as the capital, you would assume that you would reference the city as a capital. But anyway, yeah, I think that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave a comment below to increase the odds of this getting put up the YouTube algorithm. I mean, I'm super interested in hearing what you have to say, and will definitely comment. I will comment if you respond. So yeah, I guess maybe I'll do another one of these. I hope it wasn't too crazy and all over the place. If it was, I'll take some notes and be more focused next time. So definitely let me know, at least on that mark, whether or not the stream of consciousness was beneficial or not. All right. I guess that's it. Am I going to put something over this, like the trailer? I think I will. All right, gang. Peace.